Good afternoon and happy December, everyone. I'm Aimee Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut League of History Organizations. I want to welcome you all today to this colleague circle on advocacy. We're having a conversation on advocacy as well as an update on the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Roadmap project. Funding roadmap, I guess I should say, from staff from Connecticut Humanities. In addition to myself from CLHO today, we have with us Emily Garfinkel, our Membership and Programs Manager, who many of you know as well. And our guests of honor today are Jason Mancini, the Executive Director of Connecticut Humanities, and Aimee Bogush, who's the Manager of Marketing, Communications, and Engagement. How's that for a title at Connecticut Humanities? I know you're often hearing from Scott and Leanne and Becky and the folks in the granting department. So this is a really great opportunity to sort of refamiliarize ourselves with the great scope of work that Connecticut Humanities does even beyond its granting programs. And hopefully this session will give you a little insight into all of the background work that's going on behind the scenes and help us get a clearer sense both of how we as cultural organizations can advocate and the work that we can do, but also some of the work that organizations at the state level are trying to do to sustain this higher level of funding for the cultural sector in the state of Connecticut. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Jason and Aimee, who have a great run of show for us today. There'll be ample opportunity for questions, I think, at the end. So take it away, folks. If you're muted, please just unmute yourself.
Thanks, Amris. I really appreciate this opportunity and CLHO's support of our work and the ability to speak to all of you more directly and for your support of our work. I'd like to take the opportunity, along with Aimee, who will follow up on the advocacy part of this, to really reorient all of you to some of the things that we've been doing, both as an organization at Connecticut Humanities and the sort of funding roadmap that we're in the process of developing for the legislature as we head into the next legislative biennium. As Amris pointed out, many of you are familiar, obviously, with our granting program, and I'm sure have been in a number of conversations, dialogues with Scott and Leanne on our team. So you're familiar with some of that work. I would like to just sort of present a little more of an ecosystem that we're involved in and engaged in. I'm seeing a notification here.
Oh, Jason, people couldn't see you because you're on multiple devices. So I was just making sure they can see your face as well as hear you.
Got it. Okay, thanks. So some of the other work that we're doing that I really want you all to see yourselves in as well, and how you might be thinking about all of this as we move forward, is the other parts of our work that include our digital platforms. So there we include ConnecticutHistory.org. So every town, every community in Connecticut has a profile. So we'd like to be thinking about the people, the places, the events, the ideas that really center Connecticut people and our communities around placemaking. So thinking about the ways you and your organizations might contribute to that, or think about building those outlets that we can then reconnect folks back to you around. We also have Teach It CT, which is a series of educational curricular prompts for educators and students in the state. Again, one of the priorities of our cultural fund was to better connect students and educators and our public with the work that we do. So think about this as a possible outlet to elevate the work that each of your organizations might be involved in. We have sort of sidelined our tourism app called Contours, C-O-N-N Tours. It's something we're looking to re-engage as we head towards America 250. So if there are ways that you can imagine being involved with our program there, take a look through that link, that app, and look at the way that we're building that. What we're trying to do is build sort of thematically relevant topics and tours to connect sites and places and ideas across Connecticut. And then our capacity work, and I know Mike Kamizis from our staff is on the call. This really involves the capacity building work that we're trying to do alongside our statewide partners, including CLHO. So all the work that CLHO does is the reason we invest in them and they invest in you. But we also work closely with the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies around curriculum and making sure that Connecticut content is in our schools, being taught to our students and used by our educators. We work closely with the Connecticut Cultural Heritage Arts Program at the Connecticut Historical Society, looking at intergenerational connections among knowledge keepers and knowledge makers in the different ethnic groups and communities in Connecticut. We work closely with the Connecticut Democracy Center with their Connecticut History Day and Connecticut Kid Governor programs, where we're able to connect history and civics. Civics is something that we are really spending a lot more time engaging, especially given the last few years and the fracturing of our democracy. We want to revive civic literacy in Connecticut, and the Democracy Center is a really important avenue for that, along with our other partners, Everyday Democracy and the Democracy and Dialogues Initiative at UConn. Another one of our longstanding partners is the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. We've been working with them to get their programming widely recognized, key thinkers and leaders in the field of arts and humanities to be present at least live stream through our community colleges. We're looking to develop bilingual programming with them. So excited about that. We've recently brought on 3 new partners, including Connecticut Explored Magazine, who we've partnered with in the past. But again, this is an opportunity for us to connect Connecticut stories and communities with our public. You all have amazing stories that we can and should be sharing, so think about that as an avenue. We've recently partnered with the Immigrant History Initiative, thinking about the diverse communities across Connecticut and the way that we can begin to build educational programming and curriculum with those communities in mind. And then finally, the Connecticut Digital Archive, where we will be doing a lot of community-based programming in libraries, community archiving. And in that, we're really thinking about how best to build a statewide digital infrastructure. And if there are any questions about that, Mike Kamizis can answer some of that later. We'll certainly be doing other sort of thought-based programs around this and framing that, what it looks like for the state. Tangibly speaking, some of the ways that you may have already touched on this capacity building work is through the Museum Makeover Program that we've, again, partnered with CLHO on and the work of Kathy Crowell-Varda, and also with the State Library and the Connecticut Collections Assessment Program. So those organizations that are trying to grapple with what they have in their collections, organizing and making more accessible. We're trying to really build this capacity to unbury some of the things in your attics or in your archives that we can uplift and share with our public. So I'm just gonna shift now to the roadmap, but I do want you to think about the cultural funding that you've received. I'm imagining many of you have partaken in the Connecticut Cultural Fund. This has come about because of an important public-private partnership with the Department of Economic and Community Development and the Connecticut Office of the Arts. And we've worked very collaboratively with our partners there to make sure that this funding is available, that we've eliminated barriers to entry, that it's equitably allocated, and that we are really able to sort of build our cultural sector and sustain our cultural sector over a longer period of time. And we've been able to do that and really moved heaven and earth this past couple of years. Last year, we funded close to 640 arts and humanities organizations across Connecticut. This year, we're adjudicating 765 applications. We have less money this year, but we're no less optimistic about what we've been able to accomplish, in part because of all of your participation and willingness to share information through our application. And aggregation of that data is what's so important to provide back to the state, to the governor's office, to the legislature, to let them know the impact we have as an entire sector. This is the first time we've ever been able to do this in the state. And I think our collective voice and our collective power is what is going to make us successful moving forward. So I want you to think about the cultural funding that you have received and what that investment has allowed you to accomplish, and what you would do with more or continued funding at that level. And conversely, what would happen if that funding went away? Okay, that's what we're up against in this next legislative biennium. So I'm just going to shift now to some of the talking points I have for the roadmap. And I want to take you along where we've been, what we've been up to. So this is an arts, culture, and tourism funding roadmap, and it's our plan for a more meaningful, reliable, and equitable state investment for our cultural community. We're still working on the roadmap with legislative leadership, specifically folks in the Tourism Caucus or the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Caucus. So we're working on some of the details and the data that will go into a House bill. So this is basically where we're at the moment. We have partnered, Connecticut Humanities has partnered with the Connecticut Arts Alliance and the Connecticut Tourism Coalition. We joined forces back in April to develop a set of recommendations to the legislature on how to better fund arts, culture, and tourism in the state. We hired Odyssey Associates to conduct a series of public conversations. Many of you participated in that, and we received valuable feedback from over 200 participants. The steering committee for this roadmap involves a broad range of community leaders, cultural leaders, representation from different communities across the state, including the tribes, Black and Brown communities, and folks in the state, as well as legislators. So Odyssey Associates collected quite a bit of research on historical state funding. We've looked at statistics on the impact of arts, culture, and tourism and the funding models in other states that Connecticut can look to for ideas. We, again, conducted those community input sessions. And some of those takeaways that we received from all of you is that the Connecticut Cultural Fund was upheld as a model. This was very successful. We've had great reception, great feedback. I think in year 2, we've made it even easier as an application process. If you participated in year 1, it was simply updating a couple of data points. So we're trying, again, to eliminate those barriers to entry, to make this as accessible and easy as possible, while at the same time collecting some important data for aggregation purposes. What we also took away was that consistent funding was described as critical to long-range planning. If we don't have that reliable basis, it's harder. We're sort of filling in gaps as organizations. What we want is something that's longer term and predictable. So we discussed the need for multi-year funding, ranging anywhere from 2 years to 5 years. It's particularly challenging when the state legislature operates on a biennium. So thinking beyond that biennium is a challenge. But beginning to build the structures and the community support is what's going to be key here. Having more consistency in state support, especially when the economy is volatile or depressed, we need to know that that funding is still available. We also recognize that smaller organizations have faced barriers to funding opportunities, and that's been really important. We have talked a bit about raising the floor for these grants. Right now, the floor is at $5,000, so that's the minimum award. Last year, the ceiling was at $500,000. This year, it'll be closer to $250,000. So there are ways that we can use our trim tabs, if you will, to sort of right size these approaches to make sure that the smaller organizations have greater opportunities. And what we also see is that a successful roadmap would need to address the historic inequities, both in terms of the small organizations, but where that funding is going, because I know from my own time at Connecticut Humanities that we've tended not to fund Black and Brown communities in our long history. We have changed that with the Cultural Fund and with our recent last 5 years of competitive funding. So we want to make sure that new opportunities emerge and are sustained. So one of the key questions to answer here is how much state funding would arts, culture, and tourism need to provide meaningful support? In creating that funding model, we are using the data set of the 640 or so grants that we made through the Cultural Fund. Moving forward, we want to keep a floor of $10,000. Our goal would be to have a ceiling of $500,000, but again, those are movable. We would create tiers of support depending on budget size. And then part of this funding is also aimed at developing an infrastructure. So all of those partners I mentioned, those statewide partners earlier, would also be part of this funding ecosystem. Their presence, their involvement, their support is critical to sustaining and optimizing the work that we all do, connecting things digitally, building partnerships and relationships, making sure that that our content finds its way into the public, as we are public arts and humanities organizations. That will be critical. So while I won't get into numbers today, we are looking at maintaining a similar level of investment that the state has provided. In year one, it was a $20 million investment. In year two, it's nearly 11. Our goal is to be closer to year one, if not more. And that would go first to the Cultural Fund. It would go to arts infrastructure through the Office of the Arts, to cultural or humanities infrastructure through us, and also to workforce development. So ways that we can begin thinking about our public humanities programs, for example, at Central Connecticut. Ways that we can think about our colleges, junior colleges that are aimed at the tourism sector, that can be feeders for the organizations that we all work at. And this is going to be important. And I include the tourism arena because we are going into this process with them. While we have a separate line item, our sectors are integrally connected, and we need to keep that in mind. I'm not going to get into where this is going to come from. That's going to be too tedious. The keys to success, though, here for all of us is really consistent and unified messaging across our organizations and to the legislative leaders, making sure that there is solid support for arts, culture, and tourism, and that we need to really mobilize our sector. And that's really, I'm going to turn this over to Aimee in a minute, but this is really where we need you in your voices and your engagement. So we'll be working with the designated regional service organizations, the DRSOs. We'll be working with the membership of the Connecticut Arts Alliance, of course, CLHO, others in the state. So we'll be sort of keeping an eye on how all of this is shaping. But really, the grassroots and, if you will, the grass tops leaders in our community are going to be the most important part of this. It's really the ground game that is going to be critical in connecting our messaging through you to the legislators who are going to be making these decisions, whether or not to support our work, and to the extent they do support it. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Aimee. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everybody. I'm Aimee Bogush. I am the Manager of Marketing, Communications, and Engagement at Connecticut Humanities. Many of you may know me by seeing my name in an email or asking for a quote somewhere along the way, but it's nice to be here with all of you. Thank you, CLHO, for hosting us today. I appreciate that. So I'm going to share my screen. I have 3 monitors. I'm going to try to be really savvy and not look like I don't know how to do this. I don't do it often. So here we go. Okay. So hopefully you are seeing the agenda. Is that
perfect?
Perfect. Okay. So for those of you who are, since we are talking about roadmaps, here's the roadmap for today. And we're already on number 4 now. So we're going to move into engaging with your legislators. And then there will be time to share afterwards, both discussion and questions if you have them. And some of you on the call here are pros. You are already engaged with your legislators. And so, I encourage you to kind of maybe there'll be a little gem here or there that strikes a new thought for you, or if you can hang out until the end and offer advice or stories of success with your peers on the call, I would appreciate that too. I'm going to kind of be presenting a friendly entry point for everybody, regardless of their skill or experience in engaging with legislators. So just to kind of start us off and just, you might be wondering, what's advocacy, what's lobbying? We kind of have ideas about lobbying and maybe we shouldn't be veering into that space. And so I just wanted to kind of make sure we all have similar information to start off with. And there's kind of a continuum along the way here, starting with public relations, which is really just letting folks know about you and your events, your programs. Likely you're all engaging in this at some level. And then education, letting people know more about what you do, the stories that you're telling at your institution, the work you do in your exhibits, your collections, what you offer the community. Then we move into advocacy, which is really a subset of that education, where you're talking about what impacts you in the wider world, how it intersects with your mission, and the kinds of impact that you have in your community. And there's no reason to be afraid here. You can do as much public relations, education, and advocacy as you'd like, really, as a nonprofit, and not get into any trouble along the way. And even in Connecticut, where sort of the next step moving into lobbying, where you're actually asking officials to act on a specific legislation to benefit your community or your organization. Testifying at the Capitol or sending in a letter of support isn't going to get you into trouble. You don't need to register as an official lobbyist. You're not really doing official lobbying activities until you're spending $3,000 or more on these efforts or receiving $3,000 or more on those efforts. So we're really in the space of public relations, education, and advocacy here today. And we all have a place in this. It's sort of like a puzzle, if you can think of it that way, or I like to think of it as this slide is kind of home is where the heart is. And I'll talk about that, what I mean by that. So Connecticut Humanities, Connecticut Arts Alliance, Connecticut Tourism Coalition, as Jason talked about, are all working together on this funding roadmap. We are really in an advocacy and lobbying space here. And I can speak most directly to Connecticut Humanities, but the others work similarly. We have lobbyists that we used to help keep us on top of issues. We work really hard to maintain important relationships with members of the legislature, and our role is important. We have connections to other organizations, to legislators, to agencies, and we do our work for the whole sector at a statewide level. We speak to the big picture, the importance of investing in the whole sector, as well as, overall the role of museums, humanities, culture, arts, and infrastructure. We can assemble and provide statewide data. We're creating one-pagers and impact sheets. When Connecticut Humanities makes grant awards, each cycle of that, we are sending out press releases. We're alerting legislators to let them know that these awards were made in their districts. And then when you put our logo on your event, your website, your project, it's not about us. It's not about Connecticut Humanities. It's about connecting back to the funding so that legislators and others can see the impact of those dollars that they allocated to culture through Connecticut Humanities and how those dollars show up in their districts. So we can share your quotes and your testimonies, and we do that. And there's power in seeing them all together, especially with the Cultural Fund and our Sharp Humanities grants. We collected all those testimonials and have them packaged all together in one place, and it is very powerful to see them that way. So this is critical work. It's part of the process and the overall puzzle. However, there's our data stories. You bring these stories home for legislators, and at the end of the day, what people care about and what people fight for is home. And so, while we have data sheets, you have the faces and the stories, and you can make those personal connections. And that really can't be underestimated, how important that is. Legislators listen to us as a statewide agency, but they listen to you as a constituent, and it's incredibly important. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about equipping you with confidence and some tips and tools to begin and/or deepen your engagement with your legislators. Just a reminder, the session begins January 4th, so we're just a little over a month away. It's a long session and runs through June 7th. And, what we're asking for you right now, your goal is sustained, meaningful engagement with your officials and your legislators. Let's see. Okay, so right now, we are not asking you to try to convince anyone to do anything. It's just building relationships. And as you listen to the rest of the presentation, I want everyone to remember that everybody can do something. I don't want you to become overwhelmed. No one needs to do everything. You do not need to do all the things that we talk about. But if each of you is doing something, then it covers a lot of the bases. So just do what you can. And we are here to be helpers. So to help give you these tools, and you can always reach out and ask questions afterwards too. I'll make sure that you have our contact information at the end. And also, just to back up for a moment, and just remind you to be confident. You're coming from a place of being a representative of an essential organization. Your organizations are economic engines. They're part of the educational infrastructure. You're creating jobs, you're stewarding history and heritage, fostering creativity and innovation. You help us make meaning, you spur tourism. It's all good news. This is really good news. And legislators love to hear good news about what's going on in their districts. And if you let them hear from you now, and you're building this relationship around good news, when it does become time to ask them to take action on the bill, or to help support this funding roadmap, you'll have built up a lot of goodwill. So it's important. So how to go about it? The first step is to figure out who your legislators are. And there's 38 new legislators that are coming into the legislature this year. You can go to the CGA website and put in your information to find them. Let's see, I believe if I drag this over here, Amherst will give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, so this is cga.ct.gov. All of the information will be sent out to you either in the form of these slides or a resource document. So you don't need to be scribbling down anything that I'm saying. You'll get it all. So as you come onto this website from the Connecticut General Assembly, you can get to who your legislators are from a number of places. You can go to representation and find them there. If you can't remember what tab, you can always just go down to the bottom. There's also a place there in your footer and oftentimes in the center of the page as well. And so when you go in here and you put in your information, and you can do this for your organization, you can also be in touch with your home legislators if they're different. And then it brings up who your representatives are. Now, right now, as I said, we're in a transition for some districts for another month or so. And it can be worth reaching out to the departing legislator, depending on the relationship that you may or may not have established with them at this point. And it's not too soon to reach out to somebody who's coming in and just welcoming them, congratulating them, and starting the meet and greet and the relationship. Let me see here. I can, in the resources that are being sent out post session today, will be the contact information for those new legislators because they're not on the CGA website yet. So if you do want to get that ball rolling, and I would encourage you to do so, I can provide that information to you. Okay, so you've found out who they are. What's the next step? You can just begin to get to know them without even making any contact at this point. So you can go to each one has a website. If you click through that CGA site that we were just at, hold on one second, let me drag it back over. I have a toolbar in front of it, excuse me one second, here we go. Okay. So as you click through, these will take you right to members' websites. And from here, there's just a ton of information. So you can begin to do some research on the issues that are important to them. You can take a look and see what kinds of things they're posting. You can find their social media channel information here. You can sign up for their newsletters and begin to understand more about what's important to them. Also, in signing up for the emails, oftentimes representatives will have and senators will have coffee hours or opportunities in their community to meet people, and they would love for you to visit. So so that you know when those are, it's helpful if you can get on the either the social media or the new newsletter lists. Also, if you're on social media, go ahead and you can like a page. It doesn't mean that you have to like everything about that person or their views, but it's part of the way to be connected. Let's see. Also here on this page, you can see what committees your members are a part of, which can be helpful as well. So we're going to leave that. Beyond that, just doing, some web searching and finding out, you might find news articles, find out what jobs they have held in the past, state offices or other offices they might have held, and just do a kind of little bit of light stalking to find out some information. And then it's a two-way street. So we could talk a little bit about how you can help your legislator get to know you. And there's, you can do this in ways, you can make outreach, excuse me, hold on one second. Outreach in the form that you're most comfortable with, email, mail, regular postal mail, or through the phone. Let's see. You can add legislators to your mailing list so that they are getting notifications of your upcoming programs. You can actually invite them beyond just letting them know, but sending them a personal invite, picking up the phone and asking them to come. And think about ways you can make that visit special. Perhaps it's a behind the scenes visit or something that maybe the general public doesn't normally see, or you have a board member join you on the tour. Just thinking about ways to make it a little bit more unique. And definitely take a photo while the legislator is there, get permission to use the photo. Because if you do have social media accounts, it would be great to post that this visit took place, tag the legislator, they would love to see that. And then you let the community know too that they've been there. If you have swag, use it. If you have a tote bag, a pen, whatever you might have from your organization, go ahead and give that to them, make them feel like they've gotten something exciting, a little gift from you. And then after a visit, do your follow-up. So send a note of thanks, include the photo, just print it out on regular paper and send it to them. You again post to social media about the visit, and also mention the visit in your newsletter. Use that photo again and let your broader audience know that this took place. Oh, and then this is a sort of an alert, which is that you don't have to go this alone. You don't have to do this all on your own. You can think about how you might be able to get your board involved, if that's an option for you. And also I would challenge you to think about combining efforts with the other cultural organizations that are in your area. And what might that look like if you were to join forces. So finding this contact information besides what is on the legislators' websites, there's also a place where you can go on the CGA website to get phone numbers and mailing addresses, both in the office and for personal. And it depends on the legislator which they prefer. There's really isn't a hard and fast rule. So it doesn't hurt to start with the office, and even calling there and asking them if that's the best way for that member to be communicated with. But if you go to the CGA website and you pull down the menu where it says session items, and then you choose the legislative information download, you can find on the site a database, and that has all of that information, as well as committee assignments, party affiliation, and so on and so forth. This is kept updated. So it's best to go here to get it. And sometimes if you're going to do some outreach, it doesn't hurt to check here first just to see if anything has changed. So you can, again, email, phone, attending one of their events are all ways that you can get in touch with them. Just remember too that they're in your neighborhood. So once you've made contact, you may end up finding out that you're bumping into each other at the supermarket or the post office. They really want to and expect to get letters, emails, phone calls, to be mentioned in tweets and Facebook posts and comments. So it's not something that that they're going to be shocked, or it's okay. You can go ahead. It's expected that you're going to communicate with your legislator. If you can't get them on the phone, leave a message. And you can always either email or snail mail a note to them. And then what do you do after all of that? And the answer is you repeat. You just do it all again, and you just keep doing it. And it'll get easier every time. And each time you have an event. So in that follow-up thank you note, make sure you've put the next thing that you've got going on. If you have a flyer for your next event, something like that, to keep this relationship going. And you can also, as you're talking with them and getting to know them, go ahead and ask the legislator, what is it about arts and culture that is meaningful for them? And that's something then that you can share back out into your newsletter and use it that way. The other thing beyond repeating this whole process is staying informed. And as Jason said at the beginning, we're going to be communicating out through our partners, the DRSOs, CLHO, Connecticut Arts Alliance. Here on the screen, if you follow that, if you take your smartphone and take aim at the camera at that QR code, it'll take you to our subscribe page. You can follow Connecticut Humanities social media, and my contact information is there as well. When we have it, we will be sharing more of the roadmap and all of that consistent messaging that Jason talked about. We plan to have a web page, a landing page where we can direct people to for more resources. We'll have those fact sheets available for you there, sample letters and testimonies. And all of this is in preparation for the next phase of our activities. And that is as the session progresses, and that will be ramping up a call for support for this funding. Reliable, meaningful, equitable funding for the arts, cultural, and tourism sector. Also, we plan to have a toolkit. If you participated in the CT Summer at the museum, you may remember the social media toolkit that was shared that had some graphics for you, some photos, some sample posts, hashtag. We'll have all of that for you as well. And then we'll likely have monthly roundtable update sessions, probably January, February, and March. Not promising because it's still in conversation, but I expect that we will utilize that method to keep you all informed as the bill becomes a law, as the journey progresses. And there may be calls for action, such as sending letters of support and testifying at the Capitol, writing an op-ed or a letter to your editor. And at the very minimum, it will be just reaching out to this legislator that you've now developed a meaningful connection with, and ask them to support this public investment in arts, culture, and tourism. And so with that, I will try to stop sharing my screen and we can have some time for discussion and questions if you have any.
Great, thanks, Jason and Aimee.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is open. You can physically raise your hand. You can use a reaction to raise your hand. You can pop something in the chat if you want. Yeah, we look forward to questions, conversation.
Especially from some of the seasoned folks, if you have any tips that you can share, or any, if you've done any of this and how it's gone for you. Hopefully, well, shall we share the good stuff? I'm kidding about that. If there are, and actually I have this in my notes, if there are stumbling blocks or pain points, let me use all the jargon. If there are places that we can be particularly helpful, if there's something I haven't mentioned that you are thinking, boy, if Connecticut Humanities would only do this thing for me, it would unlock all of this. Please please don't be shy. Come off mute and tell us, or if you'd rather, you can email me. Emily mentions in the chat about contacting legislative aides and requesting meetings with them. And actually, that's something else that's really important, is that if you can't get your legislator, you may get in touch with a staff member, and they have the ear of legislators. So it's really important to first feel good about the fact that that's the person you're involved with. That's okay. But you know, just treating them as you would a legislator, because they will be able to bring all that information back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Aaron has in here too, don't be afraid of your legislators. He also says, but also don't bring your own biases or attitudes to that conversation. I think being open there is a really good idea. Lori, you've got your hand up. Go ahead. Nice to see you again today.
Hi, I know it's like twice this week. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for the review and the insights. I will tell you that advocacy, speaking with legislators, has been one of the most positive experiences I've had, and it's such a point of growth. And I've never had a negative experience telling my legislator something positive, and that their work did something positive for your organization. You will make their day, right? Usually all they're hearing is complaints. So if you're thanking them and for speaking up for the funding that helped your organization, you will literally bring a smile to their face. And they love hearing about things that are happening in their community. They get so many calls and so many emails, and it's really nice to stop by and say, thank you. And it will be memorable. If AAM, the American Alliance of Museums, is continuing to do their advocacy days, their training is fantastic, and walking around to visit Joe Courtney and John Larson and all of our folks like, Jim down in Fairfield, they become your friends. And they remember you, and they really like you. So even the state level as your neighbors are even better. So I will tell you, it's been such a positive experience for me. And don't be afraid of them. They're human, just like you, trying to do their job.
Thank you so much for that, Lori. And that's a good point, that much of what we talked about is completely applicable at the congressional level to the federal level. So thank you for noting that. I'm so glad that it's been a good experience for you. And also, one thing I didn't mention is around those coffee hours in the district, or opportunities to meet the public. Don't be shy about offering your organization as a location for one of those opportunities for legislators to meet with the public.
Kathy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was actually going to echo what Lori said, because I've been doing this for, it seems like it is decades now. You can't thank these people enough. You truly cannot thank them enough. If you are at a chamber meeting and they're talking, stand up and just say, I want to thank you, so everybody around you that they're getting that public recognition too. They love it and they truly appreciate it. They get yelled at enough. So definitely show the love. And if something good happens and it's in the newspaper, if there's such a thing anymore, send them that information. Hey, thought you'd appreciate this. So you're not even asking for it. It's just like, look what's happening in your district. Let them own it. Let them own it, because that will develop a pattern that they're going to enjoy seeing you and knowing that you're doing good for the constituents in their district. And then you become, what they need to succeed, and use as a campaign platform, if that becomes an issue too. So I completely agree. You cannot thank them enough.
Other thoughts, experiences, questions?
I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to fill the space. And Jason, is there a possible plan. I don't know what the protocols at the LOB are going to be. Is there going to be like an arts, culture, tourism day where we can all get together and, in mass visit folks? I don't know what this session is going to look like as far as physical presence up there is concerned. But
Yeah, so we are looking at March as an advocacy day. We'll certainly follow up with some of those details as we get closer to that and understand, it's going to be a dynamic period now moving through the session. But I think a show of voice will be really important. So this is why I think right now, what we're asking all of you to do, and I would also encourage you to share what we've done here with your peers who aren't here, is to really build those relationships. This is the substance of sharing what we do and why we matter. Think about why your organization matters to your community and the communities you serve, and make sure that they see that, and explore the different ways that your organization serves educational needs, the cultural needs, the economy of your community in the state, depending on where you are and what you do. Those are going to matter. And having those initial conversations and relationships and that familiarity will only accumulate over time, so that when it comes to the legislative session and a March advocacy day, and then all the follow-up we need to do, they're gonna know specifically who you are and the stories you've shared, and be comfortable with you knowing what you're going to be asking on our collective behalf. This is not the last 2 years was not an insignificant investment. It's the most money that we've ever seen invested in the cultural sector. And, partly that was possible because of the pandemic, but it's also an opportunity for us to show what that level of investment means and what it yields in terms of the return on investment. And those are some of the things we'll be sharing out with you to arm you with more data as we make that ask. But we don't want to get over our skis right now. We really want you to build the relationships first, and then we'll be mobilizing you with more information.
Great. I'll get you in just a second, Louise. I just want Jason and Aimee to know that Connecticut Landmarks is offering the Amos Bull House as a place to rally and gather before walking up to the legislature if you do have that advocacy day. Thanks, Erin. Louisa, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Louisa Iacursi with the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. And my position, I joined last April 100% because of a grant from you that basically paid for my position. And I truly believe that when you hire an individual, it's a ripple effect, because we've been working on keeping a checklist of basically everything I've been working on through this position and how many other organizations it really affects. And so, for example, I just had a Connecticut state organization that does an outreach program, like has outpatient program, that wants us to come and speak. So that is actually going right back into benefiting the program that's run by the state of Connecticut. So I try to just think about it as the ripple effect of an individual. A lot of times, they'll support an event, but when you support an individual or position, really just the ripple effect goes way out into the community in many different dimensions. So that's kind of how we're trying to think of it going forward into applying for future grants and just kind of getting our message out there and how much we affect other organizations in the community.
Thanks for calling that out, Louisa. And I think you're absolutely right. I didn't say it at the very beginning, but the reasons we were awarded this funding in order to allocate it to all of you, first of all, was for operating support. So to actually bring people in to build that capacity. The other parts were building a digital infrastructure, whether it's IT needs or any other technical digital components of your work. And then finally, to really connect our organizations with educators and students. And that was something that the legislature and specifically the Appropriations Committee got behind and said yes. So all these things that they said yes to and that we have awarded funding for is now the sort of key messaging that we want to say outwardly. So to your point, Louisa, yes, this allowed you to be hired and you've accomplished X, Y, Z with those dollars, and it's meant more revenue, more tourism opportunities, more visitation, and so on. So the more of you that can articulate a narrative around that to your legislator, this mattered, and it mattered not just to our organization, but to our community and beyond our community. Let's call that out and really celebrate it.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm hearing a bit of radio silence. Jason and Aimee, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make before we close things out today?
Other than, big thank you for all of you for attending. Please lean on us, lean on our partners for support. For those of you who do have more experience, just being available to your peers. We're trying to build a community across Connecticut where we're strengthening our cultural sector. We're excited about bringing people into Connecticut to live, to work, to visit. And this is one of the key pathways to doing that.
I just add my thanks and gratitude for all of you joining us today and for the work that you're doing in your communities. It's just such a great, it just feels so good to be among all of you today. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And thanks to you at Connecticut Humanities for all the work that you've been doing behind the scenes to really, to get this funding our way in the first place, and to do the work to make it continue. And I just want to underscore something that Jason had said earlier, and that was also a part of Aimee's talks, is that, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is, because there are, the history organizations in particular are wonderful for an advocacy ground game, because there are so many of us in every locality in Connecticut. There are local history organizations in every town across the state, and sometimes multiple ones, right? So I want to underscore, I know that often we feel, especially in the smaller organizations, we feel like we don't have a lot of power. We feel like, it's hard to get the resources that we need. But I want to just underscore the strength that we have in being everywhere, because that means that together, when we can speak together, we can have a voice across the state in every legislative district. And I think this is one of the reasons why, the League is really excited about working with Connecticut Humanities on trying to get these advocacy messages out, because, we have the grassroots power to demonstrate the effect, the concrete effects of these funds in our communities. So I just want to leave you with that little bit of kind of cheering for all of you, because I think it's easy for us to feel like we have too many things to do. This is really worth our while. And if we can all speak together in relative concord, then I think that, we will have success, continuing these sorts of funding policies in the future. So go out there and do it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being here. Thanks, Jason and Aimee. Thanks to all of you for sharing your stories and experiences. And if you're interested in the museum makeover program, we're having an info session on Monday at noon. So you can sign up for that on our website at clho.org/events. Hope to see you at one of our upcoming programs, and happy December.
Thanks, everybody.